Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, I'll be discussing the key points for creating a responsive layout in a Canvas app. Before you build a Canvas app in Power Apps, specify whether to tailor the app for a phone or a tablet. This choice determines the size and shape of the canvas on which you build your app. After you make that choice, you can make a few more choices if you select Settings, Display. You can choose Portrait or Landscape Orientation and Screen Size, tablet only. You can also lock or unlock the aspect ratio and support device rotation or not. Those choices underlie every other choice you make as you design screen layouts. If your app runs on a device of a different size or on the web, your entire layout scales to fit the screen where the app is running. If an app designed for a phone runs in a large browser window, for example, the app scales to compensate and looks oversized for its space. The app can't take advantage of the additional pixels by showing more controls or more content. If you create a responsive layout, controls can respond to different devices or window sizes, making various experiences feel more natural. To achieve responsive layout, you adjust some settings and write expressions throughout your app. To make your app's layout respond to changes in the screen dimensions, you write formulas that use the width and height properties of the screen. To show these properties, open App in Power App Studio, and then select a screen. The default formulas for these properties appear on the Advanced tab on the right-hand pane. These formulas refer to the width, height, design width, and design height properties of the app. The app's width and height properties correspond to the dimensions of the device or browser in which your app is running. If the user resizes the browser or rotates the device if you've turned off lock orientation, the values of these properties change dynamically. The formulas in the screen's width and height properties are re-evaluated when these values change. The design width and design height properties come from the dimensions that you specify in the display pane of settings. For example, if you select the phone layout and portrait orientation, design width is 640 and design height is 1136. As they're used in formulas for the screen's width and height properties, you can think of design width and design height as the minimum dimensions for which you'll design the app. If the actual area available to your app is even smaller than these minimum dimensions, the formulas for the screen's width and height properties ensure that their values won't become any smaller than the minimum. In that case, the user must scroll to view all of the screen's content. After you establish your app's design width and design height, you won't in most cases need to change default formulas for each screen's width and height properties. To create a responsive design, you locate and size each control by using formulas instead of absolute constant coordinate values. These formulas express each control's position and size in terms of the overall screen size or relative to other controls on the screen. In the simplest case, one control fills an entire screen. To create this effect, set the control's properties to these values. These formulas use the parent operator. For a control placed directly on a screen, parent refers to the screen. With these property values, the control appears in the upper left corner of the screen, 0, 0, and has the same width and height as the screen. Later in this topic, you'll apply these principles, and the parent operator, to position controls inside other containers, such as galleries, group controls, and components. As an alternative, the control can fill only the top half of the screen. To create this effect, set the height property to parent.height divided by 2, and leave the other formulas unchanged. If you want a second control to fill the bottom half of the screen, you can take at least two of the other approaches to constructing its formulas. For simplicity, you might want to take this approach. This configuration would achieve the effect that you want, but you need to edit each formula if you change your mind about the relative size of the controls. For example, you might decide that the top control should only occupy the top 1/3 of the screen, with the bottom control filling the lower 2/3. To create that effect, you need to update the height property of the upper control and the Y and height properties of the lower control. Instead, consider writing the formulas for the lower control in terms of the upper control and itself, as in this example. You can use a feature, the auto layout container controls, to automatically lay out the child components. These containers determine the position of the child components so that you never have to set the X-Y properties for a component inside a container. Also, it can distribute the available space to its child components based on the settings, as well as determines both the vertical and horizontal alignments of the child components. As you construct screens that contain more controls, it will become more convenient or even necessary to position controls to a parent control, rather than relative to the screen or a sibling control. By organizing your controls into a hierarchical structure, you can make your formula easier to write and maintain. If you use a gallery in your app, you'll need to lay out controls within the gallery's template. You can position these controls by writing formulas that use the parent operator, which will refer to the gallery template. In the formulas on controls of a gallery template, use the parent.templateHeight and parent.templateWidth properties. Don't use parent.width and parent.height, which refer to the overall size of the gallery. You can use the layout container control as a parent control. Consider the example of a header at the top of the screen. It's common to have a header with a title and several icons with which your user can interact. You can construct such a header using the container control, containing a label control and two icon controls. Set the properties for these controls to these values. For the header control, parent refers to the screen. For the others, parent refers to the header control. Having written these formulas, you can adjust the size or position of the header control by changing the formulas for its properties. The sizes and positions of the child controls will automatically adjust accordingly. You can use a feature, the auto layout container controls, to automatically lay out the child components. These containers determine the position of the child components so that you never have to set the XY properties for a component inside the container. Also, it can distribute the available space to its child components based on the settings, as well as determines both the vertical and horizontal alignments of the child components. If you use another feature, named components, you can construct building blocks and reuse them throughout your app. As with the container control, the controls that you place within a component should base their position and size formulas on parent.width and parent.height, which refer to the size of the component. So far, you've learned how to use formulas to change each control size in response to the available space, while keeping controls aligned relative to each other. But you might want or need to make more substantial layout changes in response to different device sizes and orientations. When a device is rotated from portrait to landscape orientation, for example, you might want to switch from a vertical layout to a horizontal one. Or on a larger device, you can present more content or rearrange it to provide a more appealing layout. On a smaller device, you might need to split up content across multiple screens. The default formulas for a screen's width and height properties, as this topic described earlier, won't necessarily provide a good experience if a user rotates a device. For example, an app designed for a phone in portrait orientation has a design width of 640 and a design height of 1136. With a screen height of 1136 and a device height in this orientation of 640, the user must scroll the screen vertically to show all of its content, which might not be the best experience that you want. To adapt the screen's width and height properties to the device orientation, you can use these formulas. You can adjust your layout based on the size of the device. The ScreenSize property classifies the current device size. The size is a positive integer. The ScreenSize type provides named constants to help with readability. Here is a graphic showing constant, value, typical device type using default app settings. Use these sizes to make decisions about your app's layout. For example, if you want a control to be hidden on a phone-sized device, but visible on others, you could set the control's visible property to this formula. This formula evaluates to true when the size is medium or large and false otherwise. If you want a control to occupy a different fraction of the screen width based on the screen size, set the control's width property to this formula. This formula sets the control's width to half of the screen width on a small screen, 3/10 of the screen width on a medium screen, and a quarter of the screen width on all other screens. The screen size property is calculated by comparing the screen's width property to the value in the app size breakpoints property. This property is a single column table of numbers that indicate the width breakpoints that separate the named screen sizes. In an app created for tablet or web, the default value in the app's size breakpoints property are 600, 900, and 1200. In an app created for phones, the value is 1200, 1800, and 2400. The value for phones are doubled because such apps use coordinates that are effectively double the coordinates used in other apps. You can customize your app's breakpoints by changing the values in the app's size breakpoints property. Select App in the tree view. Select size breakpoints in the property list, and then edit the values in the formula bar. You can create as many breakpoints as your app needs, but only sizes 1 through 4 correspond to named screen sizes. In formulas, you can refer to sizes beyond extra large by the numeric values, 5, 6, and so forth. You can also specify fewer breakpoints. For example, your app might need only 3 sizes, 2 breakpoints, so the possible screen sizes will be small, medium, and large. The authoring canvas doesn't respond to the sizing formulas created. To test responsive behavior, save and publish your app and then open it on devices or in browser windows of various sizes and orientations. If you write expressions or formulas in the X, Y, width, and height properties of a control, we overwrite those expressions or formulas if you later drag the control to a different location or resize the control by dragging its border. Thanks for watching my YouTube video. If you haven't already, check out some of the other tutorials on my channel.